All right, Bubba, start cleaning those tires up. Don't green this time. Remember, they fan out down there, so protect that bottom. Sunday drive. All right, boss man. Face car's off. Be ready. All right, Bub, be ready. Gas that bitch up. Ready. Green flag. Green.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Inside Pass. My name is Tom Baker, my usual cohort in crime here in the WSIC studio. Randy Miller is off at Parts Unknown today, so he will be back next Tuesday. We do have in his place, however, Mr. Nick Degroot from Motorsport.com, who is kind of like the third co-host of this show. And I can't wait to bring Nick on, because when we get him on the air, the first thing I'm going to talk to him about is a topic that I know he's really, really interested in today, because it has to do with IndyCar. And Nick is the iRacing IndyCar guru right now. He is practically unbeatable when it comes to IndyCar stuff on iRacing. And so we're going to ask him about that. Big announcement today relevant to IndyCar, and a 7-time NASCAR champion. So we'll get to that in a minute. And also we're going to update everybody on the playoff situation and have some conversation about what's going on in all three of the NASCAR series, if we can get to them. But certainly the Cup Series we'll start with. Again, a big weekend of racing, and just a little bit of a shake-up and change in the playoffs, and we'll try to get as much information across about that as we can in analysis. And also, of course, we'll hit some of the other news of the week. We've had an announcement that NASCAR is shortening one of its largest tracks. We're going to talk about that as well. So a lot to come here on the Inside Pass. So let's go to the phone and bring Nick Degroot out here. If you're listening to us or watching us on Facebook Live, we appreciate that. Or if you're listening to us on Saturday morning during our radio airtime here at WSIC, we appreciate that as well. Or, of course, if you're listening on demand through Race Chaser Radio on any podcast platform, we appreciate that also. So happy to have you all with us. Nick Degroot is live with us now. And Nick, well, we finally got it. It's been teased for, a couple months now, maybe 3 months, and finally got an announcement that Jimmy Johnson has signed a 2-year agreement with Chip Ganassi Racing to run road and street courses in the IndyCar series. I can't say I'm surprised at that. The part that surprises me is he may actually still run some Cup races for Chip Ganassi. I just am going to have a hard time seeing 7-time in Chip Ganassi racing equipment on the Cup side.
Yeah, that's going to be real strange. And when I heard the news, initially I thought it was 2-year full-time, and that shocked me because I originally, had heard street road course.
Yeah.
And then I later, saw that, and then I was like, wait a minute, Chip Ganassi, only street road courses. This is opening up some marquee NASCAR events should he be interested. And Ganassi has been no stranger running a third car before. They've done it with Ross. They've done it with Jamie McMurray. So that could be really cool. And I also heard he wants to do some sports car races next year. So Jimmy Johnson might just become Mr. Worldwide in 2021, running everything under the sun.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because it does, afford him some opportunity to kind of dabble, if you want to call it that, in some other forms of racing that he has not been used to running. And it's just going to look strange seeing him in a Chip Ganassi Cup car. The IndyCar thing for me, and I know this is big for you, we're both huge IndyCar fans, and obviously you are now one of the top iRacing IndyCar racers in the country, iRacing Indy 500 champion. You've got the wreath, and I hope you drank the milk. But I mean, this is, it's not as if this is a complete shock, and yet it feels like this is one of the biggest news stories in a long time.
Yeah, and the thing that's so cool about it is we haven't had a story like this in a long time where a big name driver from a certain series comes over to another series. I mean, we all remember back when all the IndyCar guys were coming over to NASCAR. Remember when Juan Pablo Montoya came over? There was Fernando dipping his toes into IndyCar, but he didn't do really anything besides the Indy 500. This is huge. This is NASCAR's most successful active driver, a 7-time champion, joining not just any team, Chip Ganassi Racing, to run IndyCar, and that's going to be huge. And the fact that he's only running the street and road courses is going to be so interesting because that's a whole new challenge for Jimmy. Yeah, a whole nother ball game. I saw some people when the news came out who were like, I'm surprised the NASCAR guy isn't just running the ovals. He's running all the road and street courses actually, which is going to be fascinating to see how he's able to tackle that challenge.
Yeah, he didn't really have too much interest in the oval side of things. He did leave the door open. I remember in his last interview after he tested the IndyCar, he left the door open for the possibility of the Indy 500. He didn't say no. He didn't really say yes. He just kind of, he said, after seeing the aero screens and how well they've worked, or the safety screens there, he feels like, I think maybe it's not such a risk, but I know he really wanted to do the street and road courses. That was really his deal. And so now it opens up the possibility for Chip to bring in another driver with some bucks to run the ovals. And, you've certainly got plenty of choices out there. And actually when you think about it, it would be kind of interesting to see maybe another NASCAR driver, recently retired or whatever. I don't know if there are any of those that are kind of, in the running here or interested, but it would be interesting to see kind of an all NASCAR team there. Maybe Jamie McMurray or somebody, AJ Allmendinger.
Something I was thinking, there is a certain big name IndyCar driver who has a past history with Ganassi who wants to run the ovals in 2021, and that's Tony Kanaan.
Well, there you go.
That would get some attention.
It sure would. Yeah, and it would add to the all-star flavor there that is that team. I just feel like this is a really, really bold move for Chip. I'm surprised, honestly, that they announced it before they had full sponsorship, but I'm suspect that it won't take too long for the funding to be found to support that effort, because Jimmy obviously is one of the most marketable motorsports athletes in the entire sport. And so, it shouldn't be too hard to find enough interested parties to make that happen. But definitely going to be interesting to see what he does on the NASCAR side. It's always interesting to me. Drivers don't retire anymore. They just step away from full-time competition. And so who knows? But I think we know Matt Kenseth has pretty much said, I don't believe I'm coming back next year. So the 42's open, but obviously you want a full-timer in that car. So you'd have to run the third car. I guess this is as good a time as any to throw out some speculation. I mean, who do you see necessarily being full-time in the 42? Where do you see that situation going for 2021?
At this point, I was a lot more sure of who was going to be in the 42 earlier this year than I am now. I'm really not sure. There's a bunch of names people are throwing out there. They're still throwing out Ross Chastain's name, Bubba Wallace. There's a few other names, and I'm just over here. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what direction they're going to go with this. And I don't think it's going to be Jimmy in that car again. I think they want to have two full-time cars, but I'm really not sure. I think if we see Jimmy, he'll probably be in the 40 like they did with Jamie McMurray, something like that. But yeah, the 42 is one big mystery to me.
Yeah, it's really going to be, I think we've had a couple of situations develop that have sort of thrown this whole silly season wide open on the NASCAR side. And I think right now Eric Jones is the domino that needs to fall. He's kind of, I would find it impossible to believe that he wouldn't be the first choice for the 48. I can't believe that Rick Hendrick would look past Eric. Knowing the kind of driver Rick looks for and the kind of image and so forth that he wants, I would think Eric would be the logical choice. Bubba, I think a lot of people are, I heard it again this morning, Bubba to the 88 and Bowman to the 48. I just am not buying that. I don't see Bubba as, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way toward Bubba or his talent. I'm just saying his situation, what he kind of carries with him. I don't see that being a fit at Hendrick Motorsports for either car. So you look at Bubba, you look at Kyle Larson, and I can't picture Rick wanting or allowing him to run the amount of dirt track races he wants to run, but certainly having Larson out there, having Eric Jones out there, and now, everything going on with Bubba in terms of that speculation, and you're starting to hear Boyer talk about, well, gee, I don't know. I just hope I want to be a part of NASCAR in any way next year. It's really kind of made the silly season almost unpredictable right now.
It really has. You got Chase Briscoe knocking on Clint Boyer's door. You got several other moving parts. And if you go to NASCAR Twitter, they're all but assured that Carl Edwards is still coming back. And he's going to be in the 42 or the 48.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the irony of that is that you got to think this is 2020. Look what's already happened this year in world events. And in sports, I can't believe that Carl would at this point after being out for so long. I don't believe that, but he would be exactly the kind of fit that Hendrick Motorsports would look for in terms of his personality and his image and all of that. But it's really, it's crazy. Ross certainly, I would think, ends up, I think Spire is going to have something to say about the future of Ross Chastain before this is done. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Justin Haley in that mix either. At Spire, but boy, I guess that's what makes it fun, but we're, barely into the playoffs, and it feels like silly season is as much dominating the conversation as the playoffs are.
Absolutely. Even more so in some situations. We're getting late into the year and we're still have so many question marks. And I can't think of a recent year where we were this far along where we didn't even really have an idea of these major rides, such as the 42, 48, and the 14.
Yeah, and I really, again, I don't know. You always can see kind of a trend. I feel like this year, who knows? I saw something the other day that said Hendrick already had the driver picked, but they weren't going to announce it until after the season, because they didn't want to kind of interfere in the whole playoff situation, which is fair enough, I guess. But that doesn't really answer any questions. I saw something else.
That makes it sound like a playoff guy.
It kind of does. And yet, again, you look around at what's going on out there. It either makes it sound like a playoff guy or they just don't want it to be a distraction, one or the other. And I don't know. It'll certainly be fun to watch. This, like I said, seems to be no trend here. I still say Briscoe to the 32. I still say that Boyer comes back unless they sign Kyle Larson. I personally, in my opinion, I don't see Larson in the 48. I see him in the 14 or not at all, unless another team kind of emerges here, like the rumors we've seen with RPM going to Toyota, adding a second car. If all that happens, then maybe. But I just can't. And Bubba is another one. I can't picture him going anywhere with the opportunity he's got at Richard Petty to increase his ownership of the team, and especially if they're going to go over to Toyota. I don't know. And now you got Ty Dillon maybe out there too, who's probably not a candidate
right,
for,
right.
I don't see him being a candidate for an elite ride, but certainly a ride like the 37, maybe, if Corey LaJoie doesn't go over there.
Mm-hmm. And you got Spire taking control of the 95 car.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's a 2-car team, and I could definitely see Ross being a part of that. We'll keep talking about that as the weeks go by here. We're going to step aside. When we come back, NASCAR made an interesting track announcement yesterday. We'll talk about that on the other side. Back with more Inside Pass in a moment.
Hello, race fans. This is Chris Wright. Thanks for listening to these guys. Man, with some great radio hosts. You're listening to the Inside Pass.
Welcome back to the Inside Pass. I'm Tom Baker in the WSIC studio in Statesville, North Carolina. Nike and James behind the production board, and we've got Nick Degroot from Motorsport.com with us this afternoon. Randy Miller is off today. We'll be back next week, and we're going to talk about something. Nick, you want to talk about out of left field? I don't think on your 2020 bingo card, I don't think anyone had NASCAR announcing that the Auto Club Speedway in Fontana was going to shrink for 2022 from 2-mile track to a half-mile track. And honestly, I love the idea when I first read about it, and I think I still do. And yet, I kind of ask myself, why that track, and why not one or two of the cookie cutter mile and a halves that we've got that don't do too well? What are your thoughts on this move?
Oh, yeah. My thoughts were the same. When I first heard it, it was excitement that we're getting a new short track and a bit upset that we're losing one of our better, bigger tracks with the 2-mile Auto Club Speedway. But to be fair, looking at it from NASCAR's perspective, yes, they could have taken one of the other mile and a halves that they own and done something with that, but they want to keep it. They wanted to do this near Hollywood. They wanted to do it near that scene. And Auto Club Speedway for them is getting close to a repave. And I think they'd rather, instead of repaving that track and turn it into another Michigan, that rather let's make it something entirely new and different to get some excitement. If you look at the plans for the track, it's like a Martinsville Bristol hybrid, because the track itself looks like Martinsville with long straightaways, tight corners.
Yeah.
But the corners are banked like Bristol, which is going to be real interesting with a 40 Cup car.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the track. Sucks that we're losing Auto Club, but from NASCAR's perspective, I understand why they did it. I just wish we weren't losing this track even still.
I hadn't thought about the proximity to Hollywood and really that whole kind of demographic and scene there. I've said for a long time that I thought NASCAR, and you can read that as Brian France, made a huge mistake when they duplicated 1.5 miles instead of half miles. So on the one hand, I think it's great that we're going to have another short track on the circuit. I think it sounds interesting. I mean, I coined it Bristolville yesterday, that combination of the two. But like I said, it just feels to me like there are 1 or 2 of the 1.5 miles that we could also, and maybe there's some sort of a mindset change now to where, they're open to that sort of a thing. If a facility is kind of underperforming and not necessarily having the great racing or whatever, maybe you look at doing something with 1 or 2, of those as well. I don't think you can have too many short tracks on the NASCAR Cup schedule, in my opinion. And I think this is kind of an interesting experiment, because if this draws the crowd and it puts on good shows and it works well, then, the motivation may be there to look at, okay, are there 1 or 2 other of our 1.5 miles that maybe we ought to be looking at converting in similar fashion? Yeah,
well, looking at tracks NASCAR owns, because it's a whole nother field dealing with Bruton and his tracks.
Right. No, I'm talking about ISC tracks.
Yeah. Talking about ISC tracks, the one I'm looking at is Kansas Speedway.
Yeah.
I think that would be the next perfect one to kind of convert into a short track, something that is much more interesting than just another 1.5 mile cookie cutter, because we got 10 Kansases on the schedule, to be frank, and it would be nice to take that track right in the heartland and turn it into a nice Saturday night short track kind of thing.
Well, you look at it and you can add Gateway. I mean, you can play with that, but I agree. I think Kansas would be a good candidate. I thought Chicagoland, and then, I mean, just to be honest, with everything that's going on in that area, I don't know why you'd even want to continue to be in that market, in that particular situation. So I don't know that you even try to save that track, to be honest, but I think Kansas is an interesting choice. I know I'll get hate mail for this, but it wouldn't bother me if they did something with Texas at some point, if they felt that they need to. I mean, the people say, well, you took IndyCar, now Auto Club, IndyCar can't run Auto Club, and it's kind of like, well, none of the guys wanted to go around there anyway because it was too fast. So, it really wasn't a big deal. Texas certainly would be different, but maybe you take it to a 3/4 mile. I mean, I just think we gotta have some variety in the schedule. And the only thing I would say in my defense about Texas is, I'm not saying it's a bad place as it is, but again, you take it down a little bit. You got your 3/4 mile oval, and you could also schedule a race at COTA and go run the road course and have that mix. You wouldn't have to necessarily think about running twice on the oval at Texas, and IndyCar, if it was 3/4 mile, IndyCar could still run there. So, again, I don't know, I don't want to assume that this is kind of a mindset thing with NASCAR. It might have just been a facility specific thing. It does open them up to utilize, utilize the rest of the land, in a different sort of a way. You could do a lot of things with it, or you could sell some of the land and make some money. So, I just thought that was a really interesting announcement, and certainly not something we were expecting. And even if somebody had teased it and said, NASCAR's about to make an announcement of a track that's going to be shrunk to a half mile. Auto Club would have been one of the last tracks I would have thought about for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned COTA there, just something that came to my mind. Imagine if they did something with Texas. They turned it into a short track and ran there in the spring.
Yeah.
Now imagine later in the year, that second Texas state that is almost always in conflict with the Formula One event. Imagine if they could work it out with Liberty, now that NASCAR really likes to do these one-day shows, show up on an F1 weekend, do the NASCAR race on Saturday right before the Formula One race, get the Formula One crowd watching NASCAR on a road course. I think that would be huge, and that would be fantastic. And it's been done before with F1 with Australian supercars down in Melbourne, so it's absolutely doable. I don't know if either party would be up for that, but I'd love it.
Well, see, I think that's you've hit on something that people have talked about for a while, which is the idea of these sort of festival type weekends where you have 2 or 3 big series. And I'm 100% sure that Roger Penske is thinking along those lines with Indianapolis. Now, again, you got to get all parties to agree, and you've got to be able to, to get the right weekend, the right situation. But, that would be amazing, quite honestly, to see NASCAR and F1 on the same. What would really be interesting is to see how much impact that has on some of the F1 drivers' views of running a stock car.
Imagine if you could get one to double dip.
Oh, yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I mean, you obviously, look, I'm pretty sure Lewis Hamilton would do it. But I would have to think that some of these guys would be, again, contractually obligated to not, get off the page, so to speak. But I could definitely see a Max Verstappen or one of the younger guys who, just want to go racing. Yeah. I could definitely
coming back to F1.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So I could definitely see that. And again, it would be interesting, and it's this would be probably harder to concoct, but you get 1 or 2 of the NASCAR guys to get in an F1 car. It's really, again, the idea of having these multi-series festival type weeks or weekends. I definitely think you're going to see something like that eventually at Indy, where you have 3 or 4 of the biggest divisions all coming together at the same time. I think that's something Roger Penske would love to do. And if, even I could see something at the Roval with NASCAR and IndyCar. But we had it already at Indy on their road course. So I wouldn't be surprised. That's a great suggestion, though. I love the idea of NASCAR and F1 being together. And I'd love to watch the F1 groups on Facebook just to, I just want to see the irritation in the F1 groups. Oh, God, the taxi cabs are running on the same weekend. How dare they? But I actually think that would be fun. I guess we'll see where this goes with Auto Club. The plans have been submitted, just to give everyone the details to, I think it's San Bernardino County is where that is. Mm-hmm. And the expectation is that if everything went according to plan, it would be done in time. It would start after the 21 race and be done in time for the race in 22, which coincidentally would make it done just in time for the Gen 7 car to come out. And that would really be an interesting scenario because you've never run that newer, shrunken half-mile course, and you got a brand new race car that you're probably still dialing in at that point and trying to figure out. That's almost more of a supercar light car. So, I like the idea that we could have some sort of mysterious and intriguing storylines early in the 22 season if that's going to happen.
Is it 2022 yet?
Yeah. That's a really good question. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll actually talk playoffs here on the Inside Pass right after this.
I'm Chase Elliott, and you're listening to the Inside Pass.
Oh boy, welcome back to the Inside Pass. That was the perfect place for the Chase Elliott reentry because Nick Degroot, boy, a lot of controversy with Chase Elliott. I don't know, man. It's kind of, I feel like Martin Truex, obviously, if you look at the video, he wasn't clear. It was his fault. I kind of feel like he sort of tried clumsily, I might add, to figure out how to sort of pass blame away, and yet said, well, if it's my fault, I'm sorry. I mean, it's just a race of deal, but man, that was a shame because it ended up taking them both out, which Kevin Harvick said, pass you very much, but I feel like that was either going to be a Truex win or an Elliott win, and we were going to see a fight to the finish, and probably at some point it was going to be contact anyhow, and that just happened to be unintentional contact that sort of did what the intentional contact might have done eventually in the race anyhow.
Yeah, as if Kevin Harvick didn't need more playoff points.
Yeah.
They just handed it right to him. But, yeah, Truex definitely had the quicker car. But with this package, it is so hard to pass the leader. And you could tell he was working him over lap after lap. And I think that frustration got to him because when he had him 90% cleared, he just decided, all right, I have him cleared. No, there's still 10% there. Yeah. Not quite.
Yeah.
I think if he had been a little more patient and kept working him over, he had enough time to get him. Heck, he may have got him the next corner because he was far enough alongside of him that they probably would have exited turn two side by side, and he would have been on his quarter panel. But, yeah, I think he just needed to exercise a little more patience there, especially with only having one win this year. He does not have that many playoff points, so he can't afford to really be throwing away races like that. He was lucky in this situation because of all the points he got in the stages. That kind of saved him.
Yep.
If he didn't get all those stage points, he would be in real trouble right now. But, yeah, I was surprised to see them throw caution to the wind like that in the first race of the playoffs. But I guess he really wanted to win, and he was getting frustrated trying to pass Chase. And I was surprised Chase wasn't angrier after the race. I think he's more just kind of he's done with this. All these guys running him over when he's at the front of the field. That's the second time this year at Darlington. The other one was Kyle Busch. And they're far from the only two times he's had incidents with his fellow drivers. So I bet he's just wondering, well, why is everybody using me up?
Well, of course, then you could go back to Chase Elliott using up Joey Logano earlier this year. And I think, again, it's kind of one of those, he's had a lot of that, and yet, this is what we do, it seems like anymore. You're seeing a lot of these accidents that, in my opinion, are just carelessness. It's not, it's just a driver being careless and not using their head. And this was one of those situations. That accident was totally preventable. We've seen a lot of the not clear kind of stuff throughout NASCAR's divisions this year. And I think it's just a more aggressive racing style. And especially since we came back from the shutdown, I feel like we're seeing that across the board. We've seen it in ARCA. We've seen it in all the big three NASCAR divisions. Drivers just, forcing their way in and, trying to force things to happen instead of letting them happen. I don't know. I don't really, I'm not saying I'm ranting about that. I'm just observing that I feel like it's the case.
And I think it comes down to just how difficult it is to pass this year with this package. You saw at Texas with Austin Dillon and Reddick. Once they got out front, nobody could pass them. So when you have a chance, you just got to go for it. You got to take every inch.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think, Kevin Harvick winning was the story in terms of, okay, Harvick gets another win, gets some playoff points. But I think the real story of this race was Austin Dillon. I think Austin proved he belonged in the playoffs. It's not a fluke this year. He's not a one-hit wonder. He earned every bit of that second place, and I would say another lap or two, and we're talking about an Austin Dillon win at Darlington. I think he was better than Harvick at the end of the race.
Oh, absolutely. And Harvick was just getting tighter and tighter, especially as they gone into traffic. I think Austin Dillon had the upper hand if that race goes a little longer. And it's crazy because we always overlook Austin Dillon all the time. It's just, I don't know why, but we do. And if you look at him, he doesn't have a lot of wins, but look at where the wins are at. Daytona 500, Coke 600, almost the Southern 500. When he wins big.
Well, that's true, and I mean, we saw that with Jamie McMurray too when he was racing.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to be a big race. He would step up and elevate, in big races, and certainly Austin Dillon did the same. This time and fell just short. And here's the, I feel like if Dillon wins that race, I feel like he's almost a lock to go probably through the second round. Just looking at the races that are in that round, I feel like he may have a chance to get to the 8. He still does, of course, but I feel like that win would have made a much bigger long-term impact for him in the playoffs than it probably did for Harvick, who already had a bunch. And, that Kevin Harvick's going to be there every week. He and Hamlin have been the story of the season. And Harvick, obviously, with that win, guarantees himself a spot in round 2. And, you just kind of look at the playoff standings. And, I mean, right now, the cut line's a tie between Eric Almirola and let's see. No, actually, I'm wrong. The cut line is actually, it's a tie between Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney and Matt DiBenedetto are both at minus 17 below the.
Okay.
Below they're at the bottom 2 right now is what I'm saying. The cut line is actually a tie between Almirola and Boyer,
right
at the moment. Yeah. And ironically enough, the other Stewart Haas car is right there with him, Cole Custer. So at 3 back. So I mean, it's still a dogfight at the bottom, and obviously we've got more racing to do, but I do feel like Dillon, if he had been able to win that, it would have been a much bigger impact. But that was a good race for him, and I feel like he and that team justified their position in the playoffs, as I think William Byron ended up doing with his good run, because coming off the win the weekend before, a win this week would have certainly had a bigger impact for him, but I think at least it's got him 9 above for the moment. So he's got a small cushion, and I think certainly he is a candidate to at least make it out of the first round, and we'll see where he goes from there. But, I mean, outside of what we've talked about, were there any real surprises at Darlington in the Cup Series for you?
For the most part, no, not really. It was interesting to see Martin Truex Jr. with how strong he was.
Yeah.
This year, he's been playing second fiddle to Harvick and Hamlin almost the whole year, compared to previous years where he was the one winning all the races. But what we saw at Darlington, that was Martin Truex of old up until the contact at the very end. He dominated that race. And if they were that strong at Darlington, I expect them to be even stronger throughout the rest of the playoffs, as long as they don't let what happened there mess with their heads. But those next 2 races are what I'm looking at. Richmond and Bristol, 2 short tracks to end this round. That's going to be real interesting.
Well, that's why I say William Byron, for example, comes to mind. I could see William doing well at both of these races and even winning either or. And so I think there are some guys that when you start looking at, what tracks are ahead. Boyer loves Richmond. If they give him a good race car, he could certainly be a big factor there. And I almost look at this scenario, and of course, at some point we know Kyle Busch is going to win, and he's getting better. But man, I feel like not having practice, that's been the bane for that team. I feel like that team needs practice to dial the car in. It's hard for them for whatever reason. And again, not trying to be disrespectful, just observing, hard for them to roll it off the truck, it seems like, and just be fast enough to go win races. It's I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but he certainly hasn't been the same Kyle Busch this year in the Cup Series that we've seen, obviously in recent years.
I mean, it's just the way that team operates, and I think it's a big part of who Kyle Busch is. He needs those practice laps, not because he doesn't know what he's doing. It's just to dial the car in to get comfortable with the car and the setup for the race. And without that, he's starting to step behind and spending the entire race playing catch-up. And we see him at the end. He's shown up in the top 5 at the end of these races a lot of the times.
Yep.
But for the most part of the race, he's just not there.
Yep, for sure. Want to get to the Xfinity Series here and kind of move along a little bit. Brandon Jones, there again, this Xfinity Series to me has put on the best shows by and large all year. This came right to the wire, and once again, Ross Chastain with an opportunity to win the race. Late race tangle with Hamlin cost them both, and Brandon Jones goes on by for the win.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row. If Ross could have avoided running into the guy in front of him, I think he wins both races.
Yep.
I think he had enough of a run on Allmendinger that if he had just maybe swooped high, and who knows what would have happened, but I think he had the momentum to take it if he could have got alongside of him.
Agree.
And with Denny, I mean, those, to be fair, those are old tires, and that's Darlington, and he's trying to turn down the track while Denny's in the wall in front of him. So he nearly had him, but, man, if he had gotten to the inside of him, that race is Ross Chastain's. He wins.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just, man, he did finish second, which is a great run. And I'm not blaming him necessarily, just saying that there, like you said, there's 2 weeks in a row where, he just hasn't gotten that first win that he could have had on the season. Ryan Sieg, a phenomenal run for third. Riley Herbst, another strong run for fourth. He's gotten measurably better over the course of the season in that Gibbs 18. Denny rallying for fifth. Burton Gregson, Michael Annette, Austin Hill, and there's Myatt Snyder in the 93, just hanging around the top 10 like he does so well, it seems like, so often. And, again, you look at somebody like Ryan Sieg, and he needs all of those that he can get, because that's a team that, even if you take the playoffs out of the issue, that team is always in need of sponsorship. And, for Ryan to go out and show once again that we can run, he can run top 3, top 5, that's a really, really big deal for him, I think.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Okay. I wondered where you went there,
yeah.
that you fell asleep on us. I didn't think I was quite that boring today.
No, the mic cut out. Don't you worry. But yeah, Ryan Sieg, I think he's solidly in the playoffs.
He is.
I think with the points, but like you said, he needs every finish like that he can get, and he quietly every race weekend seems to be putting races like that together, with the exception of a few. He earlier this year, I thought he was gonna win. What was that? Iowa, maybe? Some race where he's leading a bunch of laps.
Yeah.
But that little team, it's like the Alan Kowicki of the Xfinity Series. They're doing so much with so little every single week, and it just never ceases to amaze me. And they've been doing it for so long. For years, he's been just right up there doing what he can. And with the, I think this is their best year so far if you look at results. So, yeah, that was awesome for him. And that car was not clean. He had marks on that car. He had battle scars, and to be able to bring home third was just incredible.
Looking at the standings, of course, the big three, Cindric, Briscoe, Gregson up there, Brandon Jones, Haley, Allgaier, Burton, Chastain. There's Sieg right now sitting in ninth, and Annette, Herbst, and Brown. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting because you've got Herbst in 11th at 159 above the cutoff line. So it certainly seems like as we head toward their playoff, again, you've got Brandon Brown sitting there with 45 above, and Jeremy Clements 45 below, and Snyder 51 below. So I feel like it's starting to become clearer that Brandon Brown, despite his unfortunate result at Darlington, he got taken out, I think, in the opening lap situation, if I'm not mistaken, was it? With, Alfredo and Hemrick. didn't have a good finish, but I feel like he's at least in control of his own destiny because he's got more than a race, slightly more than a race right now.
Yeah, which honestly, going into this year would have surprised me because I would have put Jeremy Clements as one of the guys who's just going to fill out one of those final spots. I would not have said Brandon Brown. So he's done a very good job this year of putting that car up in a position to make the playoffs.
He really has. I'm glad to hear that his dad beat cancer too. That is, my mom just beat it too. So amen to that. God is good. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more of the Inside Pass after this.
This is Justin Lofton, and you're listening to the best guys on the radio, the Inside Pass.
Okay, welcome back to the Inside Pass. Almost said the Inside Groove. That's my other show, Super Modified Podcast. You can find that, by the way, along with all of our Race Chaser shows that we do each week. There's a total of 5, and you can find those by going to any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. We're on them all. Tune in and just search Race Chaser Radio. 3 words. Okay. 5-minute warning I've been given by our producer, Nike and James, so we'll make them count here. Nick Degroot is with us here in the Inside Pass this afternoon. And Nick, first of all, when we think about trucks coming out of Darlington, there's something about a celebration when somebody after a long drought finally wins that just... for me is awesome to watch. I think a lot of people feel that way. Ben Rhodes was that guy finally getting his Truck Series win. This is long overdue, I feel like. And I also feel like this changes some things in terms of the Truck Series playoffs and such because upcoming, because I feel like Ben, off this win, I feel like momentum could carry him to at least one more win. And I also feel like this kind of shakes things up a little bit, even if you look at the current standings.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually surprised because I hadn't realized how long it had been since Ben Rhodes had won because he's just always the name you mentioned.
Yeah.
He's up there in the top 5, top 10.
Yep.
And then when he won, and he was so excited, I went to look. I'm like, oh, wow, it's been way too long.
Oh, yeah.
He's way overdue for a win there.
Yep.
They really, I don't want to say they gave him one because they had to fight Derek Kraus for it, but those leaders pitting with 2 laps to go shocked me. How did you feel about that?
Well, I mean, yeah, honestly, I don't really understand why. I don't know that I ever really heard an explanation that, at least for me, that made sense. Track position is everything. And I don't know what was going on there, but, again, much like Kevin Harvick, Ben kind of, okay, pass you very much. And I'll take that win. And here's what I think this does. If you look at the playoff standings, you now have 7 winners in the playoffs out of the 10 spots. Now, what's interesting to me about this is, you look behind him, and Christian Eckes, Todd Gilliland, and Tyler Ankrum are 3 drivers that are subject to win at any moment. And you've got Derek Kraus back there, who ran the race of his life, in my opinion, in the Truck Series over the weekend. He's sitting at 10 below the cutoff. But again, if you get a new winner, one less spot available. So I feel like this battle, especially with Gilliland, Ankrum, and Kraus, Eckes is safe. He's 72 above the cutoff. But Gilliland, Ankrum, and Kraus, this battle is just going to be epic, much as the Cup battle was with Byron Johnson and DiBenedetto, I think, down to the wire.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a blast watching those 3 battle for the final spots. And you have to look below them as well. I know they haven't had great years, but George Friesen and Johnny Sauter are more than capable of getting to victory lane. We've seen them do it before. And if they pull out a win, that's just going to upset the whole apple cart. And that's going to change everything up there. So I think if you are in that little battle with Ankrum, McGill, and Kraus, especially if you're Kraus, you're not looking to say, okay, I have to just beat Todd Gilliland. You want some insurance. You want to get them both. You want to make sure you are solidly in, because somebody like a Friesen or Sauter goes and wins one of these final races before the cutoff, it's over for you. Doesn't matter if you got Gilliland, if someone behind you goes and wins the race.
It's going to be interesting, because I feel like every week it's somebody different of those 3 that sort of stands out. It was Gilliland a couple of weeks ago, Kraus the other week, Ankrum's the one we're still waiting for that breakout race from. Again, at any moment, that is subject to happen. So this is going to be a fun series to watch. Real quick, I want to get you, we've got less than a minute. Real quick, I want to get your Cup Series pick for the weekend.
Ooh, we're going to Richmond.
Yes.
Redemption for Martin Truex Jr. He's going to win the race.
So Truex wins at Richmond. Okay, I'm going to withhold my pick until tomorrow night's Motorsports Madness show, but Randy Miller will note that you're picking Martin Truex to win this weekend for our fantasy.
And it was cool to be Randy for a day, by the way.
Yes, you filled his shoes very well. Okay, Randy will be back in this seat next week. I'll be back over there in the corner where I belong on this show, and we'll look forward to more of Inside Pass. Thanks to Nick Degroot from Motorsport.com. Make sure you read his articles, because he's really a good writer, and he's a good iRacer, too. Just ask him. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on Motorsports Madness tomorrow night.